And we're live. Hello and welcome to another episode of Matty Allen Live. I'm your host, Matty Allen, with special guest, Look into Crypto. How's it going?
Good, good. How's your doing great today. How's your weekend going, Maddie?
Very good, very good. It was really exciting to be able to go on Discourse Syndicate last night. They had an excellent program, and it's just been a good week for crypto, right?
Oh, absolutely. That it's actually starting to get really difficult to keep a track of everything that's going on. So it's almost like
Yes.
you basically have to pick and choose at this point and kind of prioritize around certain things based off the schedule. But it's pretty incredible just how much content is active on even across like crypto Twitter. The Hex community is super active. So I'm not gonna lie, like I feel like I'm falling behind relative to what's everything that's going on. I think a lot of it is just kind of at a certain point you kind of pick the ones your favorites and then you stick to those and then keep up with whatever the latest info is, and then really just how the communities like what's going on in the community essentially. So fortunately, the streams are super active, specifically for the Hex community. So it's always much easier to kind of recoup and kind of pick up where things may have left off, since there's so much content actually getting retweeted and passed around on Twitter.
And our show tonight is only going to go for about another hour and 20 minutes
Mm.
because Funding Jim is going to be on next. And so we'll be handing off the crowd to him and his panel discussion that's going to be happening after this. So if you and I have to talk at 2x speed, we might just have to do that in order to make sure we get through all the awesome topics that we're going to talk about tonight, which include talking about Dogecoin, aka Dogecoin, why you should stay away from that, and other kind of crypto traps that you could be lured to because of pump and dump dynamics. But then I really want to pick looking at crypto's brain about the future of ETH and HEX and all things crypto. And so to get started here, I'm going to run a 30-second intro clip and then we'll take it off. Take it away. We were running about 10 minutes behind because of some audio issues, and Long Live Hex made a really nice comment about how you and I are worth waiting for. How sweet.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Now, where should we begin? So we promised
Mm.
people who are clickbait clicking that we'd talk about Dogecoin. So
Mhm.
it looks like in our thumbnail, Elon Musk is doing like a live production of The Lion King and has accidentally picked up the wrong lion because he's holding the Doge, right? So what is the Doge?
Yeah, so the Doge, this has been a historical meme coin. It's been around for quite a while. I believe it's merge mines off of scripts, off of I think it ties into the same mining algorithm that Litecoin uses. So it's
Oh,
been
okay.
it's yeah, the founder for it. I don't think he's really returned back to the crypto space. I think he kind of let things be towards the end of 2017, and then kind of stepped back from the market. But the network is still going today. It's more historical meme, but it's been historically through like each of the market cycles. Definitely a it gets a lot of traction for sure. Like whenever there's like a huge run up on, like, let's say the price of Doge. So it's just been a historical oscillator. It's used mostly as an oscillator versus Bitcoin. By the way, I'm not suggesting to invest in Dogecoin. Like, quite frankly, if you're looking at the price charts
don't
today,
buy Doge.
don't buy.
It's a
don't
joke.
buy Doge.
Even better, it's a pump and dump, right?
Mhm.
And you are not at the beginning of the pump and dump. The pump and dump started back below a penny or at 2.5 cents. I remember holding Doge a long time ago in a place far, far away. And, it was never that good to me, even, in 2017 or 2018. I think I ended up breaking even on it, but that was part of my, $50 or $100, exploration into altcoins, I guess, away from Bitcoin whenever I was newer in the space. And so now, guess what? Everybody gets to learn from all the mistakes that we've made in the past. And so you don't have to repeat history. There are a lot of people. I got a really good buddy who actually introduced me to Bitcoin back in, I don't know, like 2013, 2014. Neither he nor I really appreciated what Bitcoin was going to become, but he had been using it back then. I think he spent like 1.5 BTC on a 6-month VPN back then. But he's like into XRP now. And so I try to tell him, I sent him a whole analysis that I did today. Like, here's why you shouldn't buy XRP. Like, it's a security. It's being prosecuted. Like, Ripple is not the same thing as XRP, supposedly. And like, when's the last time you went to your bank and they were like, oh, did you want to send this money by ACH wire or money order or by Ripple? Right? No, that never happened to anybody that I know of. So it's kind of, and then Garlinghouse and the other guy, they're in a lot of trouble because they kept saying publicly that they were long XRP, and in the meantime, they were secretly dumping on people's heads. And some of their dumping was public, but they said that they were doing it through their foundation, but they were also doing it on the side to the tune of like a lot of money, like $600 million. I just read the SEC report today, but whenever you're in a scam coin, then you have like a huge budget to spend on tricking people into thinking it's not a scam, right? So you can pay people to write a bunch of articles and say, oh, let's speculate on whether the SEC is going to drop the lawsuit or something. When's the last time that the SEC dropped a lawsuit? Okay, Ethereum? Well, that's different. I'm not exactly sure why it's different, other than the fact that the founders of Ethereum weren't dumping it on your head and lying about it, first of all. And Ethereum, they didn't get approached by the SEC ahead of time being told like, look, this is a security you need to stop before they even launched it, as far as I know. So
yeah, they have there was initially, and this isn't necessarily by some specific standard or anything like that, but there was a group of different like third parties, like Coinbase, for example, and perhaps like a few others, that attempted to make some kind of ranking scheme in terms of what constitutes as, let's say, decentralized, and then what constitutes as something that hits closer on the band to centralized. So, for example, yes, Bitcoin was rated as like number one, meaning like you could call that decentralized, and then
back before institutions bought it all up. And
correct, yeah. And I don't recall what they. I do know. I believe XRP was listed, but it was also rated much higher towards the centralized side, due to how the I guess due to how the tokenomics, or as you mentioned, the founders or whoever worked close in that organization having the ability to dump supply onto the market through the entire bear market. So that'll be a really interesting one to see how it plays out, because I haven't really kept too much track, at least in terms of the latest news on that.
It's all the rage.
Okay.
Everybody who is mad at the government is like buying Bitcoin at $55,000, which, okay, I'm a little bit okay with that. But they're also buying Dogecoin at like 7 cents.
Yeah.
I just have to laugh. I have to laugh when I say that out loud. And then they're also buying XRP at any price above zero.
Right.
Like,
yeah, I think a lot of it is when you have, because each cycle you essentially have a wave of new like retail entering the market. So for example, like if you've seen a lot of the people on crypto Twitter, they've been in the market for a much longer period of time, so they have a better sense in terms of what, like what in terms of like prices and all that kind of stuff.
I'm like 100 years old in crypto, and I've only been in for like 3.5 years.
Yeah,
well, when I really knew that I was buying it for a reason.
Yeah, because I mean, even 3 years, it is an extremely long time. So I do like the 3 to 100 comparison, because
it's like dog
it is
years.
Actually, yeah, it's
Doge years. Stop buying Doge.
But the kind of the dilemma with new retail is they buy thinking it'll go to like $50,000 or something, just because not the market makes, or it's like really their first time going into like some kind of investment vehicle, which is going to be cryptocurrency for a lot of young people. So I think a lot of that just comes down to time. Like you do have after a very long period of time, you do start to get more and more separation. But since like the majority of the space is highly speculative, it's pretty wild just what ends up happening during these market cycles. But yeah, if you're watching the stream now and if you're contemplating Doge, you're very late to that. That's for sure. So that's where a lot of new people end up getting wrecked, is they just get in at the wrong time. Most of them, like actually almost all of them. So the whole thing with Dogecoin, because it's been a historic oscillator versus Bitcoin, and what ends up happening is through bear markets, you'll have just like some speculators that may buy like very low. They may speculate a little bit on Doge, buy some, just keep it in their wallet. And then sometimes you get these big oscillations versus Bitcoin, but they're very fast, and it's just the supply redistribution every time. So basically that gets dumped. Whoever bought in effectively basically gave their Bitcoin away to whoever was basically distributing the supply. Which I think it's mostly if I had to speculate, I'm guessing it's mostly the exchanges for the most part that have a large part of that supply. So,
ooh, that's an excellent point. Now, here's a question. I've got a bunch of questions for you because you're so smart when it comes to crypto, and I'm sure lots of other things too. So, is there still Altseasons, or is that old?
I don't. I think when we hear Altseason, I just don't really see that behavior necessarily being the same as the last cycle. So for example, the Bitcoin, if you look at a chart of Bitcoin dominance, it's like last cycle when there was Altseasons, it was literally like a cliff. Like Bitcoin dominance just basically fell like a cliff. It just tanked over a period of months. But this time, the market is getting smarter over time. So when people, mention Altseason, I personally don't think we're going to see the same level of like Altmania that we saw last cycle, with like literally every coin going like 200 to 300% in the matter of like 2 to 3 days off like the exchanges or something like that. In terms of altcoins, like they're,
I think maybe it will come around again.
mm,
And my rationale for that I'm
mm-hmm,
just kind of like coming up with on the spot would
yeah,
be that it's like alt season is more of a mechanism against like transfer wealth from people who are early to people who are late. And
yeah,
so if people are getting in late into Bitcoin, the
mm,
only thing better than dumping your Bitcoin on their heads would be to then have them buy your alts and dump those on their heads so you can buy back their Bitcoin cheaper. It's like a bait and switch.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and it happens really quickly too. I mean,
Because
a
it
lot
was
of the
like,
time.
remember when it happened before? It was like 2 weeks after Bitcoin crashed, or like it was
Yeah.
like there was like an extra 3 or 4 weeks of
Hmm.
alt season
Yeah.
after the
So
all
I,
time high.
yeah, after the all-time high, there was a couple weeks of speculative mania with altcoins. So you're right. Like that's where the coins were basically it was kind of like each of them were taking turns, pumping a lot in price. And then all of that was basically getting like dumped back into Bitcoin, or you had people come in by local tops. I think in terms of the dominance, like because Ethereum also played a huge role in terms of that last cycle, because that's where really it was the first big like ICO boom. So there's a lot of speculation there. So initially, like Ethereum, I think it was mostly Ethereum, but it expanded a lot in size relative to Bitcoin. So that's where you had that huge drawdown in terms of the Bitcoin dominance. And then all the ICOs that were, since there were so many ICOs at the time, and because the supply of those was heavily constricted, there was a huge there was at a certain point where dominance, I think, dropped even below like 30%, may have even gone lower than that at a certain point. But this time around, like
Yeah.
the decrease in Bitcoin dominance is more gradual versus last cycle. Every time there was a huge drop on it, it was big. Whereas this time it's more gradual, and I think a lot of that just has to do with the investing behavior of some of the big money coming into the space, most notably through Grayscale.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the first time around when we saw Ethereum pump up to
Mm-hmm.
what was it, maybe 1,400 or something,
Mm-hmm.
what you had in that situation as ETH was going up from pennies to 1,400, you did have the ICOs being built out. These were basically, some of them were scams. They were trying to exit, but others were actual companies. They were trying to hire people and then pay them in dollars so that they could pay their rent and put food on the table. And so what you had was this situation where everybody was basically pressured to like hold on to ETH because it was going up so fast. But then like at some point it ran out of steam. And then the reason why it dumped so hard fundamentally was because all those projects, even if they wanted to fulfill their promises, they wouldn't necessarily be able to if the price was just going to crash further than they could handle, right? So it's like if they wanted to use that money for actually developing things on the blockchain, then they would have to sell their ETH, and selling ETH is a good way to make the price go down.
Mm. Yeah, and that's actually a good point, because Ethereum had a gnarly distribution throughout the bear market because of exactly what you mentioned there. Because through the whole ICO boom, effectively, like a lot of ETH was getting pulled out of circulation, going into like, let's say the wallets for the developers. So that effectively was supply that was off the market. But then, kind of as you mentioned, towards the later stages of the bull market, as that supply started to get sold off, that also caused like a huge, I think Ethereum crashed over, I think it was somewhere between 90 to 95% from its all-time high.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it fell quite a bit in the in the bear market. So it took from that point on it was basically a 2.5 year bear market for Ethereum before it finally started to slowly get back into its uptrend. I know it's gone up a lot recently, but that was after a very long bear market, exactly because of that whole ICO bubble that you just mentioned.
I want to say hi to everybody in the chat. How's it going, everybody? Crypty Girl, awesome sweatshirt. I love it. Johnny Rico, how's it going? Crypto 303, El Hexidente, Tiago, Unwrecked Pirate, what's going on? And everybody else there in the chat. Good to see you guys. Let's see. And we got more people joining us now. I know everybody's tuning in to watch me pick the brain of Look Into Crypto. And so let's see. My next question here is going to be, how is it possible that Richard knew when the exact tops and bottoms were in Bitcoin and Ethereum?
I think a lot of it
stated them and didn't have like wrong guesses that he deleted.
Yeah, I think I would say a lot of it. I mean, I think a lot of it is just experience and just wisdom in the market. Richard's been in this game for a very long time, so he just has a much better sense of prices, how quickly things can go up, like what could potentially be peaks in the market. It's actually extremely difficult to do that, even after you have years of experience like in the market, because once you start to hit like a speculative mania, it's kind of a guess as to how long it can go on for. There's certain things you can do to give yourself better inputs as to how close we are potentially to an end. But I would say a lot of it is just he just had the experience and wisdom, and just in general with like trading and all that. Like he's seen. He's been here for a long time, and that goes a long way when you're looking at things from like a macro perspective.
The correct answer was Richard is a time traveler.
Yeah.
No. I like your analysis. No, I think you're right. Yeah. It's actually bringing up for me all the fake news that I learned about investing before I really started understanding how the world works and testing it with things like HEX that aren't listed on exchanges because we're not paying any middlemen. And so, boom, now we know how crypto works because we're actually kicking the tires and seeing what gives. It makes me think of how, famous Wall Street people, they always say you can't beat the market. Warren Buffett, he made $1 million bet, right? And he advises his own family to not try to pick stocks, that they should invest in index funds. Well, we know index funds are great for middlemen and governments who want to be in control of everything anyway. And then they can go around and selectively say, this is insider trading. If you actually know something, if you've become an expert on a topic and you know about it, then you could be accused of insider trading, right? And so the fact that crypto doesn't have those same rules necessarily because it's built on a new system, I still fear that the old system is going to get rebuilt onto the new system, which is why I think HEX is off to such a good start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do make a really good point. You do make a good point there, because what's starting to happen, at least with like legacy finance, is it's becoming more and more common for banks to offer custodial services for cryptocurrency, which I personally would not recommend, because then you're storing your wealth with like a centralized third party. But they are entering the game with that intention. Like that has been moving really far ahead. I don't know how much of the services are being used, to be honest, but they are aware of what's taking place. And there was actually a really interesting article somebody wrote. It had some kind of ties to like the Federal Reserve. I think it was tweeted by David Fetter. My apologies if I'm mispronouncing your last name, but there was an article he tweeted that went into depth as far as what DeFi was, like how all the protocols work. And it was actually very well written. Like whoever wrote that, actually, they did their homework on this space. So they are paying attention, and they're trying to figure out where they fit in the grand scheme of things. So I think we are going to see a lot of that evolve pretty quickly over the next, basically sometime by the end of this decade. I think it's going to happen a lot faster than most people are anticipating. So it's definitely coming. I'm not really sure what to expect of it. I almost kind of get the sense that in the grand scheme of things, like you have the option to use like the decentralized network, and I'm kind of speculating they may try to tap into things on like layer 2 to offer some kind of service or something like that kind of fits more in line with where the market's going long term. But if the intention
is MicroStrategy selling their stock at a premium because they hold so much Bitcoin, is that a layer 2?
MicroStrategy, I believe they're mostly just they're just offering equity. So I believe for MicroStrategy you can buy like equity in their company. As far as any kind of raising of funds they're using, I haven't been following that too closely, but to my knowledge, I don't think there's any kind of layer 2 that they're offering now. I think a lot of it just goes.
It's kind of like it's a layer 2, not in the sense we would think of it,
okay.
but just in the sense that like monetarily speaking,
sure,
legally you have a claim to their what do they call it, their reserve asset that they're using instead of the dollar. And they keep issuing, I think they issued public debt or something, or bonds, they call it, whatever. They're just making up money that doesn't exist and buying Bitcoin with it. So that seems kind of interesting. And then Tesla follows suit. So it seems like between those two, they've got what, 4 or 5, we don't even know Tesla's buy price, $4, $5, $6 billion worth of Bitcoin between the two.
Yeah, I know Tesla, they bought 1.5 billion back in, I think, early January. So whatever the price of Bitcoin was at the time, probably around like 30,000 per Bitcoin. Yeah. So they were able to add, because what they essentially, when I read some of Elon's tweets, I think it was mostly with the intention of having the company's balance sheet not necessarily overexposed in liquid cash. They kind of basically described it as a less dumb version of holding, instead of holding 1.5 billion in USD, we're just going to hold it in Bitcoin and just have that as an anchor on the balance sheet. So I think for Elon, it was to be honest, he got it. He even said it, like he's pretty late to the party, but that was the intention, at least for Tesla. Whereas I think MicroStrategies and Mike Saylor is going like, they're going much harder trying to like find other sources of money to keep buying up more and more of the supply. And I guess like even to your point, like with the layer 2, technically it is in a way like a layer 2, because essentially if you're investing equity or have Bitcoin with like a company or something like that, the risk level on that's like higher versus using something like a chain that's decentralized. So I guess that is definitely a way to kind of think about it, because layer 2, you basically sacrifice security for convenience, but the convenience is meaning it's likely going to be centralized on layer 2, and then if you want decentralization, you have to keep things on the main chain for Ethereum or Bitcoin if you're holding Bitcoin.
Yeah. What do you think's going to happen, people? You're going to buy Bitcoin and let Michael Saylor hold on to it, and then the world is suddenly going to become free? Either like the people who have been pulling the strings already, either they're going to show up at Saylor's door and ask for the keys, or whatever radical leader you elect to get rid of those people is going to do it, right? So centralizing an invention that is important because it allows for decentralization, probably not the brightest thing to do. But it's kind of idiocracy, if you ask me. This whole thing.
At least in the case for, I guess like in the case for Bitcoin, because I don't really know how they're like how it works is like, let's say you're investing in MicroStrategies. I don't really know like what extent that.
So we're after this stream,
Yeah.
there's on Gary's stream, we're going to be reviewing a video that some influencer put out, and it talks about how MicroStrategy lost $7 million last year, and their gross margins are decreasing. So like literally, this is a failing company that was worth, I think, less than $500 million.
Yeah.
And then he bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, and now his company is worth $9.5 billion.
Okay.
So the margin that people are paying, literally, his company isn't doing anything except pumping Bitcoin. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, I did notice like because the MicroStrategy, like the price chart for it's very I mean I personally would never buy a MicroStrategy, but that was kind of the sense I got with the whole, because I mean they were basically not really it was kind of just like a very unknown company until the whole Bitcoin part of it started to kind of take over like a lot of the social media headlines. And then they're, of course, like now one of the main headlines throughout like at least this part of the market cycle.
I listened to his talks. He's a smooth talker.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of the strategy,
but I would never buy. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah,
I would never buy.
There's probably like as far as like the advice he's recommending, like so there's stuff he mentions like in his in a lot of like his videos. So personally, like I don't have an interest in investing in MicroStrategies. So that, I guess, just to make that clear. But I've seen like videos where essentially, and I'm sure this was probably suggested by somebody else, even for Mike Saylor. So he probably found a source of information, and then he's basically promoting that as a form of truth, which is fine if it's actually good information. So I think his ideology was that like, if you buy, let's say, Bitcoin or some kind of cryptocurrency that you have like a high conviction of long term, then the idea is like you don't sell that, like you don't sell that to get, let's say, tax liabilities and such. He was basically suggesting there's other ways you can still gain wealth with the assets that you have. Yes. So like, for example, like of course in HEX, like you have the staking reward over a period of time, depending on what your stake length is. So essentially what Mike Saylor was suggesting was using, let's say, these other strategies to still generate wealth without liquidating your assets. Because once you liquidate your assets, you end up having, let's say, tax liabilities. So you have your capital gains tax, and then there's, of course, short-term versus long-term gains. And a lot of that is because of the tax liabilities. And especially for a market such as cryptocurrency, it's actually very difficult to even let's say buy, because like the intention is like, if you, let's say, liquidate your assets and you want to try to like, you buy in at like a later time, it's probably likely you're going to end up with like less coins at that later point in time because of the tax liabilities, and then just naturally the difficulty of selling tops and things like that isn't even a reasonable expectation by any means. So yeah, and that was kind of
the whole thing is just like, the whole fiat system is just like a joke, right? Mm-hmm. So like, either you have to sell your Bitcoin to pay taxes, right? Or if you sell your Bitcoin, you have to pay taxes. So you can't sell your Bitcoin. Otherwise that would dump the market. And then now what? The stock market is like attaching itself to Bitcoin. More and more companies are going to buy Bitcoin. That's your use case for buying Bitcoin at 55K. So now your parents' retirement is going to be based on the price of Bitcoin never going down, which is we expect it to go down unless more and more companies buy it. And then what? You're just supposed to borrow fiat dollars? Like, that sounds pretty good. Like, you can borrow fiat and then your debt is denominated in fiat. And now you're going to be a fan of them devaluing the currency faster and faster. Devaluing the currency devalues the trade imbalances. and the debt against the rest of the world, which further impoverishes and enslaves the rest of the world, you know, and everything's great, right? Like, we can keep using cheaper and cheaper money to like make cheaper and cheaper things, right? And, you know, just be all excited that we're the new ruling class who literally have to pay higher and higher prices for everything. And then there's still a banker deciding whether you have access to either whether you get locked up because you didn't pay taxes or whether you have access to those loans in the first place. And then what are you doing other than a leveraged trade basically against yourself where you can get liquidated? You know, why would the government not set you up to take a loan on your crypto? Who's holding the crypto in that situation? What is the point of having crypto if you're not holding it? What's the point of giving somebody a loan if they hold their crypto? The whole thing just doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. And it, again, the reason why I listen to Michael Saylor is because like, he's so good at making things sound good. Like, but really in HEX, I don't know. I just want to know what everybody else is hearing. Like, I don't even think I have to lie that much or at all in HEX, right? Like the lie I have to tell people not to buy HEX, right? Because I'm worried that there's too many rich people who are going to get a hold of it. But then I go further and further down the rabbit hole and I realize, oh, there's low liquidity. So literally, if you have $1 billion, you literally can't get HEX. You would push the price against yourself. So it's like, I think it all comes down to the psychology of the community. And I think maybe some people are going to be focusing their efforts on like outbound messaging, but any outbound messaging I do is going to be targeted at the middle class and not at people who are influencers now. We got into crypto to make we got into HEX to make new whales. We got into crypto to be decentralized, right? To leave behind the old system. And if we end up just recreating the old thing, you know, it's the richest people are the ones who are going to have enough money to speculate on something and who are going to be able to hold it when the price of things goes up. So the
kind of the ideology, at least for like what Mike Saylor's saying, is like it's from like an ideal standpoint. If let's say you're holding like Bitcoin, so for example, there's of course like the liquidation risk as you mentioned, and then two, those are services that you have to go through a centralized third party to even get those kinds of services. So you have basically liquidation risk and then third party risk if you're using something like Bitcoin. In reality, the entire like DeFi movements in practice, like those are only tools you can even access like through Ethereum. And then there's of course like the vetting out, because you kind of have the whole weed out process there too, because the DeFi and when I mention DeFi, like we're talking about like all the different like coins and stuff. Like HEX is basically its own individual product. It's basically the CDP. It's much more like in practice from a top level, it's actually much more straightforward, like what it does over time. The game theory is that's kind of a separate thing, but that's its own product. But then there's also other products too, like on, well, I shouldn't really say product. It's more so like the other ones are more so projects because most of the other stuff is very experimental. So there's basically more risk with some of the other plays if you're holding that over a long period of time, because I'd be surprised like if things like smart contracts were even audited. Like there's a lot of you basically have risk through the smart contracts, mostly through a lot of the other DeFi plays. But in terms of like, you know, lending and borrowing, I do think eventually things will like in a more decentralized fashion, but I don't think it's going to be on something like Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin's more so like kind of the narrative right now, but kind of the reality is these financial tools can only exist on, you know, platforms such as like Ethereum, which is very liquid because it has like those smart contract capabilities. So yeah, I think for now, like that's why like in the grand scheme of things, like cryptocurrency is still extremely early, because at a certain point, like it takes a long time for the information that, let's say, like some of the more savvy crypto crypto people know to like kind of eventually make their way into other people that are just entering the space. Even like Mike Saylor, I'm speculating, but I don't think he even knows about like what's even available on Ethereum, things like that. And it just takes time, because I think that's mostly a lot of it. It's part of it. But from my viewpoint, like the whole decentralized aspect of it, I don't think is going to necessarily come from Bitcoin. Like I think it will always be used as, let's say, like a store of value or something like that. But I think a lot of the other ideal financial products that somebody else will want will be on platforms such as Ethereum.
I think my favorite thing about HEX that I've learned recently is that Michael Saylor can't buy it. Like he could look into it, he could look into HEX, but then he would like put yourself in his shoes. Like what, he's going to move the price against himself 100x on a $50 million buy? Like he can't do that, right? It becomes, all he would be doing would be enriching people who already have it. So that's literally why HEX, I believe now, has been ignored by all the powers to be, and you know why it's getting gatekept. I had originally, when I was 50 years ago in crypto time, before the big payday, I was predicting that the gatekeeping would stop after big payday. I'm on record saying that. Well, guess what, Maddie? The game changed. Or now you're just waking up to like all these hidden dimensions in HEX. The low liquidity environment. I did a show yesterday where I just went through like at least 4 or 5 different reasons why that's a really genius move, especially with the high fees right now. It's kind of naturally selecting only people who have more conviction, and it's building up people who have who are still building their conviction, right? Because it takes a lot to pull that $50 trigger to make a swap, and then another $50 trigger to do a stake. But like those people, they're going to have stronger hands, and that's what you want at this phase of the project, to be shaking out the small hand or the weak hands with low liquidity, which on the downside, you are forcing people who want to dump to push the price against themselves on the downside. And then that only serves to basically push out the other weak hands who are like, oh no, it dropped down to 85% of a penny. Like, now I don't believe it anymore. I'm going to sell. And so you want those people to sell at this phase. If you want the long-term mechanism, and we don't even know, like there's so many dimensions to this. I almost I don't want to say them all because it's like, it's too good. It's literally too good. And every other influencer, I don't think that they would take that approach. I think they would be like, pump my bags as quick as we can. But for me, I'm literally like, I will keep buying HEX. It's just, it's just too good.
Yeah. If you have, cause even if you have things like long-term stakes, so if you're staked out of a long period of time, I mean, at the end of the day, like what's really gonna matter is like what happens over very long time frames. So if you're looking at things like within like even just like a few months, like that's honestly like not even like a lot of time. Like you even look at how things in crypto, like they really do change like on a dime, where it looks like nothing's really going on, and then things just suddenly change over like a period of like 2 months or something like that. So that's kind of like the nature with like a lot of just kind of, I mean, I guess technically you could call it, I guess like investing, like in general, like the whole point is like if you want to be like rich when you're older or something like that, like the whole point is to you buy when the price is low, like you buy when there's not that many people talking about it, blah blah blah, so on. And then at a later point in time, like I mean, we're seeing it now, even like in the cryptocurrency space, like we're starting to get a new wave of money coming into the market. And you see how quickly things like prices can change over a very short period of time. Like, Bitcoin and Ethereum, for example, have had really big runs over the last couple months. And then perhaps like a couple months later, you have a rotation where HEX does well for like a period of like a couple months. And if actually, even if you look at the historicals on the price chart, even for something like HEX, it's actually done its moves. It's done it basically over like a matter of like the really big move it had. It actually did it over 1 month. Like it's had multiple like successive monthly candles like green, but the really big move happens like in a month where it went up like 8 to 10x in price. So that's kind of how cryptocurrencies are. Like when they pump, like it's extremely fast. So that's what I often tell like a lot of people, and like somebody that's new to the market, like, hey, this is just kind of how this market works. I mean, Ethereum literally was in a bear market for 2.5 years before it had the run it had today. So a lot of these things, like that's kind of where it
isn't
kind
by
of goes,
accident.
Yeah.
I believe that the more and more I study the HEX market, like the more I realize. So for example, one new insight that I've had this week, it kind of speaks to something that Crypty Girl said in the chat, which is that she's getting feedback, on Instagram now that she's promoting HEX, about HEX is a scam. Here's the cool thing about that. When Richard goes around, when he launches his coin and intentionally goes to people he knows will call him a scam. He went on a show on the day that HEX launched, the hours that HEX launched. He went on a show after he stayed up for 48 hours. He went on a 6-hour podcast. He was on there for 4 hours with Tone Vase and a bunch of lawyers who have a show calling out scams. Okay. I didn't appreciate this until I took a step back. HEX is like a sheep in wolf's clothing. It's called, like, it presents itself as a scam, I think on purpose. Like there's so many economic like breakthroughs in HEX. Like Richard could have started by explaining the project like that, but he started explaining it intentionally putting 10,000x return in 2.5 years. And then he backed that up with something logical, comparing it to these other things that have existed before, like Ethereum. But the fact, okay, look at the game theory. If you repel all the weak hands and all the haters and everybody who already holds all the power in society, if you propel them by using scam language, the only people that you're going to get are the people who study it the most and the people who really believe the most, maybe the people who deserve more to be true to their ideals.
Yeah, and that's the thing with a lot of if you look at the market in general, I mean,
am I wrong? Like, what do you think about that idea that like HEX presenting itself as a scam actually could help it in the long term?
Yeah.
Like all you need is more buyers than sellers. And when people are locking up their coins, we don't even know, like HEX is designed to trick you into thinking that the OA is going to be a problem when it's not, because the OA holds billions of dollars of ETH. Like, and any HEX that the OA, like, it's literally the same argument. Like, why don't miners ruin Bitcoin, right? They don't ruin it because they're getting paid in Bitcoin. Like, and so there's protection there, right? But the same way, why would the OA dump on its own head if it does have a big part of the supply whenever the OA has so much ETH? And even if the OA bought a bunch of HEX, which it looks like it did, during the launch phase to create a floor on the price and to create an interesting chart, like now the OA probably is not doing that anymore, right? And that's actually beneficial because then the OA has more than 51% than it needs to prevent a malicious fork. And then it can take that extra, what we think it's 85% of the supply of HEX. So it takes that extra 35% and it dishes out this super high APY only to people who are locked longer. And so it rewards those people and trains them to probably stake again, right? And so that's part of the Genesis coins. And that's why we're getting 20 to 60% APY right now, above and beyond even the percentage. So literally in this launch phase where the OA is distributing Genesis coins that it bought up in the early phases, is distributing those over time, over a 15-year period to people based on how long they lock, right? Like that kind of launches the system in a clever way where even if 2/3 of the coins are locked in the real supply, because the real supply is at 15%, and if 10% is locked, then there's really only 5% liquid. So that's a pumpamental, the fact that it looks like there's more unlocked than there really is, but it also pays more than it would be if 2/3 of the people were locked, or if 2/3 of the coins that were really available to sell were locked, because the OA is basically giving out free coins, like for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah. So a lot of the, I guess like for a lot of the like the negative stigma like around HEX, like a lot of it is like speculation like surrounding like the OA, things like that. But a lot of like if you look at a lot of cryptocurrency, pretty much what decides whether, let's say, the coin has like staying power over a long period of time is, for one, like the community is obviously really important. So HEX obviously has like a really big community surrounding it through crypto Twitter. So a lot of it is like you have holders, or in this case like stakers that believe in like the long term for something like HEX, which would reflect itself like on the price over like a long period of time, is like one of the factors. And then two, like the other thing is even to your point with like the OA, if you look at basically any coin in the entire space that has like fell down like in the ranks where it ended up having like whether like, let's say for example, like initially before even Ethereum, most of the speculation was around Bitcoin forks. So what would happen is you would have supply get pre-mined, it would go on some kind of exchange, and then whoever pre-mined the supply would dump the coins. So that would basically totally kill it. So a lot of the coin, like a lot of what it comes to, like just crypto in general, is like you have believers, and then with a lot of like the Bitcoin forks, for example, you would have whales that would dump supply that would basically totally kill the price, and then that was basically it. So kind of the game theory with like HEX is you have like the I don't think I can pronounce it correctly, but benevolent whale. So that's like that's really what that's like basically the whole game theory that surrounds HEX, that a lot of people are either not really considering or basically having some kind of like speculation with. So that's kind of the whole thing. It's like if you believe, let's say, like in the long term, and you have long term stakes, then whatever even things like price do like over the period of like a couple, because oftentimes when you have big movements, they're really fast, and then and that's really what that's just how the market ends up. That's just how it works in crypto. Like the only thing you can really do, like if you're basically buying into the market, you always have the option to like, you can hold Ethereum, you can hold HEX, like you can basically split up like, your portfolio however you want. Like that's ultimately up to like whoever's entering the market. It's just there's going to be different percentage gains relative to like whatever your holdings are. So I think a lot of the problem is like most of the speculators that do enter the market, they get drawn into, let's say, like whatever the hype is during the bull market, where they risky, and then they get they basically end losing everything to the entire bear market and shaken out of the market. What happens every single time, but then during the bear markets, you have the cycle starts to reset again. You have distribution, and then you have people come in and start buying, like they have stealth buys, and then after a period of time you have the next expansion cycle, and that's been playing out over and over again. So Yeah, I would say basically time is really the biggest factor in like basically a lot of crypto in general. So that's really what that was basically the bet like I made. That's why like average is over. I think it's actually over 8 years. Like if I look at my average stake length. So in the
Same.
meantime, it's accruing like interest, and then when I get to that later point in time, I'll basically look at it and then decide however long I want to like restake it or something like that. So I'm personally playing this over a very long period of time, and that's the whole thing. Like either way, you're gonna get basically fun no matter what. Like that's just gonna happen regardless of like any coin. But that's like the whole idea is like if you're staking it long term, you're getting basically that interest coming in that effectively pays for a lot of that negativity that you do see one way or another. Like there's never, I'm just going to tell you now, like there's never going to be, you're really never going to be in a situation where you don't have like negativity, for example. Like, so for example, even Ethereum, the gas fees are really high. So the negativity is like, it's very high on crypto Twitter. So you see a lot of this showing with like Binance Chain, like come over to Binance Chain. But the thing is like, even though Binance Chain can do, let's say, really well, like I'm not going to speculate on price. I don't hold any Binance Chain personally, and I'm not making any recommendations there. That's ultimately up to you. But ultimately, like if you look at the way the network's set up, it's basically set up with like 21 validators. So it's not really like, in terms of it being a decentralized network, it doesn't meet that same level of criteria that Ethereum has. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is like, at the end of the day, like every design has trade-offs. And yeah, you can have a centralized design that's really fast and efficient, but it's centralized. Like if you want something that's centralized, like I'm personally just going to use like a brokerage and go access the equities market. Like I'm using like a third party effectively. So, but we're gonna see this happening over and over again. And what ends up happening every market cycle is the money ends up flowing into the strongest pairs like over time. So historically, since Bitcoin and Ethereum have been in the market for longer, during the bear market, a lot of coins in the market lost a lot of value relative to those like Bitcoin and Ethereum. But then what ends up happening is over time, you do start to get other stuff that emerges that perhaps can gain value relative to those two, but it takes a very long time to basically get to that point. And most of the coins in the market are not going to be able to compete with those two, in my opinion. Like especially stuff that's built on other like on other networks like Binance Chain. Like yeah, it can have a lot of speculative hype, but I personally don't like. I'm just going to look at, what the picture paints like 1 or 2 years from now. I think there's a huge risk in general. Like if you're building stuff on some other network that's off, like that's not using Ethereum, you don't have access to the same level of liquidity that Ethereum has, as well as just
That's
like
an excellent
the
point.
DEXs. So
yeah, I know we've got like 21 minutes left, and so I'm going to be probably asking more and more questions of you to see what your answers are, because I want to learn as much as I can from you here. I do want to make a point though that I went very easy on Binance and CZ because he's a middleman, and I went easy on him when I let him block me on Twitter. Matty doesn't get blocked by many people because he doesn't have many bad things to say about people in the world. But, CZ's just lucky that Bitfinesse hasn't found him yet. Because let me tell you, Bitfinesse, he has a particular distaste for middlemen that, let's say, is unspeakable about on such a family-friendly show. So anyway, with that being said, now I want to ask you, so what is Ethereum going to do? And, I mean, if you could lock Ethereum, would you do it?
I would say like at least for this, because I think they do have, let's say, a staking contract you can deposit Ethereum into. I don't know if the requirement is still like 32 ETH or something like that, but personally,
I was just thinking like theoretically, like would you like
theoretically,
is like Ethereum, is it something that like that you would trade, or is it something that you would hold long term? Do you
yeah,
hold it because you want to pay gas fees on HEX?
So I hold Ethereum because I truly believe like its valuation over time is going to go up massively. Like, not financial
Really?
advice. Like, I really do believe Ethereum, like the valuation of it is going to go up over time. Like, if you look at the relative comparison between Ethereum and Bitcoin, like both have done well, but so far, since if you measure everything from the bottom of the bear market, which was around $80 for Ethereum, and then let's just say 3,000 for Bitcoin, Ethereum has like outperformed like Bitcoin during that period of time. It is going to be extremely volatile, like on the Ether to Bitcoin pair. Like, that's just going to happen. That's just the nature of the market. But I think basically a lot of the network effect around Ethereum is so big that it's really led to like the success it is today. I mean, basically after Bitcoin, to me, it's logically the best position after like Bitcoin for institutional investors to buy some stake in, because Bitcoin was the first one. So it's the most trusted, let's say, for like billionaires coming into the space today. So they're mostly positioning like into Bitcoin, but some of that money is starting to flow into Ethereum. And it's also listed on legacy markets through, I think it's ETH is the ticker. So you can actually access liquidity on legacy markets, though that is more of a derivative. Like, when you hold ETH, you're not actually holding the physical asset. You're holding it with and trusting that Grayscale has the equivalent amount of Ethereum that you're holding. So a lot of that is taking place.
So what you're saying is that like Michael Saylor's description of gold as a dumb rock, like that Bitcoin beats that because it's basically dumb spaghetti code, and Elon Musk saying that Bitcoin is slightly better, keyword slightly, than paper IOUs that get printed ad infinitum. You're saying that a decentralized computing network that is used by the greatest number of crypto developers and has the greatest use case and is so incredibly successful that people are willing to pay extreme 10x fees, 50x fees from just months ago. You're saying you predict that the market will, for once, maybe act in more of a rational way to like appreciate that?
So in terms of a lot of the gas fees. So for example, if you look at Bitcoin last cycle, towards the blow off top, it was taking users like 1 to 2 weeks to even have a Bitcoin transaction confirmed on the network, because of how much demand there was for the block space to move coins around. So we're basically seeing that with maybe not necessarily to move like Ethereum itself as the native asset, but there's a huge demand to access the smart contracts that require higher gas fees, where people are paying those $100 to $200 to pay, let's say, pay the miners to broadcast the transaction with the smart contract. I think over time that is going to get resolved, at least from the perspective of the gas fees. And then the other aspect is there's already so much economic mass that's already tied to Ethereum that completely discounting it long term, I just don't think is really realistic. Like, it's already has a massive network effect. Like Bitcoin, if you look at basically even Bitcoin today, like it had issues with its block space towards the end of the 2017 cycle, but now it's recently gone over. It's now over $1 trillion in market cap. So it's still done extremely well since then, and I really think a lot of that is going to play out kind of similar with Ethereum. They do have network upgrades lined up. I think the first one is called Berlin. I don't recall if that one addresses some of the gas fee issues. I'd have to look at those. But then there's going to be another.
That's named My Little Pony.
Oh, wait, are you being sarcastic, or is
Yes.
there? Okay, yeah, they
Well,
have.
it could be.
Well,
I could have just predicted the future. Who knows?
Yeah, they're gonna have another network upgrade after that. That may roll out what's referred to as EIP 1559. That also changes the game for the tokenomics of Ethereum long term with the fee burning. There's a lot of well, I should say there's some politics with that one right now with miners, even though I still think ultimately it is going to go through, but there is the politics of that right now with miners. But I think all in all, after EIP 1559 rolls out, you've basically hardened the tokenomics for Ethereum. And then eventually when they do get to Ethereum 2.0, that is going to reduce that is going to help out a lot with the gas fees. It's just, I think with Ethereum 2.0, what you're going to see is the most used, because essentially you have a bunch of chains that are going to be running in parallel with each other. And right now what we have is you could call it chain one that has all the DeFi stuff going on. There's still going to be a high demand for that. And I think one way or another, we're going to see the price of gas fees and things like that reflect like whatever the demand is to use the platform. So all in all, I just kind of look at it. It's just, this is where it's currently at right now. And as far as like improvements over time, like that's just going to kind of come with time. And I guess
what's
like
the incentive for them to make like
Mhm.
what's the incentive for them to like make that stuff go faster? And like so is the total supply capped?
So right now the total supply of Ethereum is not capped. So I think right now it's 2 blocks per there's 2 ETH per block that's coming in. So I think there's probably at least like 5,000 ETH, maybe more. I'm not sure how many blocks come in per day. But there's a certain amount of Ethereum that's coming into the market each day. So as of now, like at the time of this stream, the supply of Ethereum is not capped. But the idea is with EIP 1559, the fee burning could actually cause effectively a deflationary aspect where the way it's designed, you end up burning Ethereum out of circulation that exceeds the amount that's coming into the network. In reality, I think eventually you'd hit some kind of steady state, but the fee burning mechanism would effectively it would actually put realistically a higher bounds limit on the supply of Ethereum that could be extremely valuable later on, especially once they have like staking where you stake your coins and receive like, I don't know, 3% interest on it per year. Though that's I think that part's still a little bit further out.
Can I ask a really, really stupid, silly question?
Oh yeah, you could ask anything. Yeah, no problem.
So why do you need miners and burning electricity? I feel like I should know this, but so like to prevent double spends is the whole idea here in crypto, right?
Yeah.
So like, why can't you do that easier?
Oh, you mean just to like actually do a double spend itself?
Yeah, like with proof of stake, basically you're saying, all right, however much percentage of the crypto you own, like that's how much you're responsible for. If anything goes wrong, and like the computer that we gave you, we give you the code, basically, here's the code to make it's been audited and it's not going to allow double spends, and you run that. So now we got a decentralized network. Like, why do we have to burn so much electricity to stop double spends?
So it's perceived as like in the case, like I guess if we let's say rewind to Bitcoin, so or even Ethereum as it is today with the proof of work miners. So kind of the idea is the amount of capital investment they have, let's say to even have miners, and then just like the monthly overhead costs to keep running that. The idea is if somebody was to collude, they would effectively be destroying their capital investment in, let's say, the miners, plus whatever revenue they have coming in from validating the blocks on Ethereum. Because effectively, like if something like that happened, it'd be catastrophic, and then the whole trust model basically completely falls apart in that circumstance. So the idea is like ultimately what you're saying in theory, like there can be a group of, let's say, mining pools that collude with each other. Let's say you have 3 or 4 pools team up and do like a 51% attack. The problem is once they do that, effectively their miners it basically becomes worthless in the case for Bitcoin, because you're using ASICs. So their capital investment is destroyed, and then they effectively then destroy whatever mining revenue they would have had coming in each day, just mining the blocks, and then just being honest about it. So I think a lot of it is because it's a capitalist mindset where if they act in a dishonest way, they basically destroy. It's a self-defeating mechanism, effectively.
But how's it different than just having a bunch of nodes? I guess I don't know enough about proof of stake, but like if you just have a bunch of nodes, and then if your node like acts up and the nodes check the double spends, and then if your node is like making mistakes, like you would just stop a double spend from going through. Like how often is that really happening? If you're stopping it from happening, like, and then if somehow if it goes wrong, then like I just don't know how it would go wrong. Like and maybe because they're not using all that computing power to stop double spends, right? They're using it to like prove that they spent the most money, and then they should be the one to check, maybe because when Bitcoin was launched there wasn't any value in it anyway, and so you needed people to basically put up computing power as the mechanism. But like at this point I don't know, I guess I need to think about it and learn more.
I think you're right on at least on the part for staking, where I'm kind of more on the side that it's way overkill to use something like computing power and just like burn massive amounts of electricity just to validate transactions on the network. Like I am more on that side, that it's really not necessary. And I do think ultimately the direction of the space is going to move towards staking because it's far more efficient. So I think there's a lot of like benefits there. So like, for example, like let's just say you look at HEX from that perspective. If you look at, let's say, so what's happening is like when you stake your HEX, you gain like the security benefits of something like Ethereum that has like a really high hash rate across the entire network. So your security model there is really good, but your efficiency is also much better because you don't have to like burn massive amounts of like electricity to stake your coins. Effectively, all the dirty work, it's like you're effectively getting subsidized in a way by the miners, like in a weird way, like I guess.
It's like ordering a hit on somebody.
So it's
you don't have to do any of the dirty work yourself.
Yeah, so like they're the ones that are responsible for like the overhead cost effectively, until with the exception until you mint your coins, basically. But if it's like 10 or 15 years, that's still so far out. So you gain like the security benefits of Ethereum, and I do think eventually those security benefits will be in the form of staking, because I just think it's just a more efficient way to do things. And I think a lot of the narratives around proof of work are gonna kind of fade away after staking's been in the market for a longer period of time. Because I mean, staking it hasn't, at least to this scale, it hasn't been around for that long. But if you let's say you fast forward 5 to 10 years, I do think the landscape or just the perception around that is going to change massively. I don't know what that necessarily means for Bitcoin. I do think Bitcoin is going to be in the space for a very long time, but I think there is going to be a general consensus over time that staking is just a more practical way of doing it, as opposed to using massive amounts of computing power to validate the network. Because staking works just fine, because a lot of it is incentive based, and that's the idea with staking is, like as Maddie mentioned, like you have a bunch of nodes, and then dishonest behavior. The idea is like they have slashes or something like that in place. Like if somebody tries to like do something maliciously, they could potentially lose their entire stack of like ETH or something like that. So I think a lot of it just kind of comes down to like the robustness of the incentive model, and I think that's what keeps like even like Ethereum as it is today, at least up until this point, it's had a pretty good incentive model that are going to make it better. In the case for something like HEX, you have the incentive model with the staking. And then a lot of it is just kind of comes down to time for the market to kind of assess like whatever the fair market value is. You have these expansion cycles, things like that. But I guess long story short, I do think staking is the future for cryptocurrency in general.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of exciting stuff happening, and I know Motley did an excellent program earlier today. I caught the tail end of it, and then I was able to chat with him for a few minutes before I went live here with you about this whole ZK swaps thing. I have not looked into it enough to say whether I'm going to like put any money into it. I was playing it I watched Randy's video 5 days ago. And so 4 days ago, I put $80 in to buy some ZK swaps. And apparently it like doubled in price, which I was just playing it for the airdrop aspect, you know, where you put $80 into something and then they give you $10,000 of free money. Like I wanted that option, but I guess they're not going to do it that way. They're like saying ahead of time, like, hey, we'll give you 1-to-1 in like 3 or 4 days from now. So that's a different kind of airdrop than the surprise kind. And so we have no idea what's going to happen. You know, people might flood their money into that, or, you know, it could be the opposite. I know. But so all I can say is like, you know, do your own research. For me, I've put in $80 into ZK swaps. It's a really cool technology. I'm not sure how it's different than any other kind of decentralized exchange other than you can trade for free once you're inside of it. And I think it's still trustless. So go ahead and watch Motley's video, and I'll try to do another video before everybody. Well, and let me know. Message me if you have insights into what this is all about. What's your opinion on all these airdrops as we wrap up here in our last like 3 to 5 minutes?
Oh, airdrops are awesome. Like free money's awesome. So the main one I got was like Uniswap. There was like some that was really nice, like having just free money free money in the wallet the next day that I was able to like sell, and so that was really nice. And then I'll have to look into the ZK swaps thing, because if I may want to partake in that as well. And because if there's free money on the table, like I'm gonna take it. I mean,
so if it's not a surprise, it's not the same thing, right? Because then you've got people trying to basically front run and push the price up, and so. But I think, you know, I think it's definitely worth looking into, and that's your name. So the more that as a community we can kind of bounce our ideas off of each other. This is not financial advice, right? And at the same time, we're able to share what we're doing, what we're thinking, and then hopefully there's not going to be too many angry people coming at us, you know, the next day. And if there is, at least we'll be able to commiserate with them and say, hey, you know, I lost money on that trade too, right? That's something we haven't heard in a long time, especially being in crypto these days. So I think more all-time highs, you know, they're in the forecast. Also more corrections, right? Because literally if there's one thing crypto will do, it will test to see how strong your hands are, and it will allow you to be emotional and give your wealth to other people who are being less emotional about their investments. So if you want to tune into Hex Therapy, some of the episodes we've done have been more about market emotions. Others have been more for fun, understanding yourself with personality and different stuff like that. But if if people want to find more of your content, where are they going to go? And I'm sure they
Yeah,
will.
you can find me on Twitter. LookIntoCrypto. That's really the main spot. I'll probably start being a little more active in a couple weeks. I think right now, I would say really the current state of the market, things are getting very it's getting very exuberant really fast. I think, I mean, either way, my long-term view on the market is bullish. Like, I do think this stuff in general is going to do really well over the next year, 1 to 2 years, or however long the cycle goes on for. But yeah, if you want to see any of my content, you can find me at LookIntoCrypto on Twitter.
And I would love to do another stream with you sometime soon, because I've really enjoyed this one, and I probably still have like a million questions for you, because I respect your opinion so much. So thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for having me on stream. I always enjoy the HEX streams are always a lot of fun. So really, it's a great community. So that's a huge positive.
Let me see here. I'm trying to tune in and see if I can see the stream that we're going to switch everybody over to. Let me run a 30-second thing here, and then we might pop right back up on the screen and have to talk for another 30 seconds or so. So hang with us, everybody, while we make sure to hand you off to the next awesome HEX stream that'll be going over some more relevant recent news and information and opinions. Hang tight. I got the time wrong. It's starting in an hour. Do you want to do another 20 minutes of content here before you have to take off?
Yeah, absolutely.
Bonus. Surprise.
That was a fake out.
Yeah. We just got rid of all the people who don't watch our outros. You've been punished if you left. So we got Bifiness here, Trevor Hansen, BMA, BG Hex. What's up? Thanks for the stream, Keon Theta. I'm still looking into how I can make that run correctly, and to be able to program mental health into money by giving away badges on the blockchain in a free manner instead of having to pay gas for them. Motley said more about the ZK swaps. I went ahead. Okay, so my play, here's how I'm looking at crypto right now. I don't know if ETH is going to go to $2,000 or $200 or $20,000 personally. What I do know is that HEX is going to pay me in HEX if I lock it up. And so the amount of certainty and the amount of reward that comes with HEX is just so overwhelming to me that it's like prying out of my cold dead hands, that are made of such diamonds material, to get me to really do anything other than speculate on MetaMask airdrop. I'm timing those correctly, right? So if you want me to pay more than 120 Gwei, you're pretty much out of luck, because I'm going to find the times when the gas is cheaper in the middle of the night on the weekends. I go and I look up what the gas price is. I look at it very regularly, probably way more than I look at the price of crypto. And because I am ready to pounce on my next opportunity to game an airdrop and get rewarded handsomely for that, and then be able to lock it up in this once in a lifetime opportunity to earn Genesis interest. Because I can pretty much guarantee you that it's probably not going to be 40% APY to 60% APY for those long stakes forever. I could see the OA decreasing the free coins that you're getting beyond the ratio of what everybody else is holding liquid and paying 3.69% inflation. Hope everybody's with me. But the idea there is it's more certain than anything else. And it's just got so much upside, I think. How do you think HEX will perform in a bear market?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one to think about, because if you actually look at the staking ladders on hex.vision, we're kind of actually I could even pull it up right now.
Yes. Have you watched the Quant Gang shows recently?
I have, yeah. I've seen a couple. I've seen a few of the episodes.
The end of the last one, I dropped like everything I've ever thought about the future market supply, which really just blows my mind that we can see the future market supply to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's the part I agree. Like, that's the part that's so interesting, because right now there's a big spike, at least for the month of March, in terms of the stakes that are coming out. But basically over the course of this year and then into 2024, it's a decreasing amount of stakes that are coming out. And then it's kind of in this lull for a long period of time, up until 2029, 2030. So I think that is like, I am speculating when I say this. Like, I obviously don't know this like for sure, but I am speculating because of that supply restriction. I'm speculating that it's going to reflect that better in terms of the price, like in a bear market, because there's less supply that's getting market sold. So that is something I'll be looking out for, like in the next bear market, wherever that is. I'm not sure where the cycle top is going to be this time around. There can certainly be a lot of fake outs where things retrace, 20, 30%, and everybody thinks it's over, and then it continues marching on. I think a lot of the time, like wherever the blow off top is, I don't think we're going to know that until there's enough hindsight to look at it, or unless you're Richard and are able to kind of spot it before it actually gets there. So I guess that is actually something that I will be paying attention to. Like if I see Richard get bearish on the that is something I will take much more seriously. But for now, I'm pretty optimistic, and then I do like what I see with like the staking ladder distribution basically across the entire decade, as it even kind of winds down going into like 2022.
Isn't it amazing how much I trust Richard and others can? Because I mean, like, he could literally go around and say like HEX, like, but he could make promises at this point. Like, it's already been launched. It's not a security.
Yeah.
The launch phase is over. Like, but he's not doing that. He's holding back. The website, in a strategic way, the website was just updated, but the fact that he kept it looking bad for so long, if you go back and look at his stream several months ago with Hexo, he's saying it makes sense to have a website look bad in the beginning stages of a project. So that's a signal to investors that they're early.
Yeah, I just pulled up the website right now. I am extremely impressed. This looks amazing. Like, because I think also, I believe crypto, or whoever's involved like with the website, like, job well done. This is extremely extremely set up. I think if Crypto Coffee's watching it, I think he was also one of involved like with the design of this. I'm really impressed. This looks amazing. This color scheme, amazing.
Coffee made a lot of contributions. Many of them were not included, but he was part of the impetus that, allowed this all to happen, and that's his specialty. And there are definitely some parts of the design and the code I think that he did work on.
Yeah.
They used the same model that I have on the on my YouTube page.
Yeah, I actually noticed that. When I actually saw your YouTube page, no joke, like I'm being very genuine when I see this. I thought that looked actually extremely good, even from like a marketing standpoint. I was impressed, like even with like the banner, high resolution looked amazing. So I think that kind of stuff, it's really good. It's really good eye candy. Like right now, when I look at the HEX website, I just want to keep looking at it because of how it just looks really nice. Like I'm super impressed with it. So I think that I think that it looks like the image you have in the banner. Is that I now have to? I'm pulling up your YouTube channel here, Maddie.
Yes,
I like the way the banner was set up on that too, and I think this is actually good advice in general for anybody that's interested in just having like good marketing online, things like that. And I'm not trying to like I don't have the capability or to necessarily create like really good marketing content like this, but when I see stuff like this, like to me it just looks really nice that I think other people would appreciate as well when they see that level of quality.
I've been working on my thumbnail game. It was very weak early on, but it's getting a little bit better over time. I don't know if you can see all my videos at the same time. Probably you can. I'm very new to all this streaming stuff, even though it seems like I know what I'm doing. I definitely don't know what I'm doing. This is all a test. And reality is, in fact, a code. What do they say? It's a simulation. Yes, reality is a simulation. I hate to break it to you if I'm the first person to tell you that. But LookIntoCrypto and I, we've actually been sent from the future to not give you financial advice, but to beat around the bush about how HEX might be something to look into. Let's see here. So this is the new HEX website. It is beautiful. It is well thought out, how it's put together. It has this awesome video that explains HEX. It has brilliant descriptions. See, they changed that. So on the stock image, and I'm not sure if I think they might have given her fingernails, or like I think they might have. I don't think she had. I think those are CGI. Those nails that she has.
Okay.
But they changed. It used to be a Bitcoin, and now it's a HEX coin. Very well done. I need to change mine or something. Beautiful site. Beautiful description.
Yeah, the font's really nice too. I really like the font on the website as well.
Good point. I mean, this is something we can be proud of as a community, for sure. And it's all here, right? And so it's laid out simply enough on the landing page here. And then you can go to this tab here. You can look for the different pages. You can see the testimonials, the community, right? All the links. The tech specs is an excellent section. I covered that on a stream. I think we got like half an hour into it, and then I said we would come back to it to really dive deep into all of these different points and what they mean and how we can understand them thoroughly. I think is really helpful. Let me see. Oh, I was going to show everybody. So if you want to introduce somebody, so I'm advocating for everybody in the HEX community. We actually don't need to get a bunch of rich people to buy into HEX. Like, if they wanted to, if you wanted to put $1 billion in, you couldn't. You would push the price against yourself so hard that you would you would run away basically, which is perfect. That's great. We're creating a new system here. We're not creating the old system where you have to be in control of all the power and you have to exploit everybody else and you have to be right connected and selling your soul, all these things, right? And so I would encourage you to get your family and friends into HEX if you think it's right for them and if you think that that they would want to earn interest, right? If you want to work on your elevator pitch, you could say HEX is better than Bitcoin and it pays 20 to 60% APY, right? And then if you want, so what crypto coffee last night, no, not crypto Kool-Aid, I get my crypto drinks mixed up. He said what he does, which is a pro move, is if he gets no coiners hitting him up, like from his personal life, saying, hey, how do I get into crypto? You know, I heard I could buy the top and sell the bottom. Then he has them, he makes them watch a certain list of videos before he will talk to them. So he's not wasting his time re-explaining the same things over and over again. So I'm totally adopting that strategy, and I'm going to be focusing a lot of my efforts on onboarding people that I know who like are good people and they deserve to be in HEX and they deserve to like be early. And I'm going to send them all to like this playlist, which has, and so you're all welcome to use this link if you want and share that with the people in your lives, because in a very short amount of time, it's only, so what is this? This is like 2 minutes, right? And then those together, 8 minutes. In 10 minutes flat, 9 minutes and 53 seconds, you could have somebody learn from all three of these awesome videos explaining what HEX is. And there's a little bit of repetition there about what staking is and why it's so important. That's going to do a lot of your work for you. People can watch it more than one time. You know, it takes me an hour to explain something to people sometimes. I could just be showing them these videos. And then we hit them with the HEX 2020 rewind, which if you remember, it starts out with a little FUD. It's like all these people telling Richard it's going to fail. And then it kicks in with the epic music. Then the price is going up. And then the community comes in. Have you seen that one, Look Into Crypto?
I may have. I know I've seen the most recent one at the top of the list, or I don't know if that's the most recent, but I've definitely seen HEX is up 352x per year.
Yes,
I know I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen a lot of the content. I just don't recall based on the thumbnails, other than the very first one. I definitely recognize that thumbnail. But yeah, a lot of this stuff definitely helps out a lot. I think somebody in the YouTube stream made a really good point that YouTube playlist, I think it was, Hex Mac made a really good point where these kinds of playlists are also really good for onboarding. Anything that helps anybody understand it in like intuitive videos, things like that are super helpful. I don't know if there was one specifically on. So all right. So when I first set up my stakes, I did think about things like future gas fees and such like that. So I did put like a bigger chunk into my stakes to account in for things like that in the future. That's really I don't know if I mean, to be honest, that I don't know how common that is, I guess, for people to have, let's say, low HEX stakes coming out at a later point in time. But that is something I know I've introduced like one of my friends to HEX, and I gave him a certain recommendation, like I would do at least like this amount or higher for your stakes over this period of time. So I do have general recommendations there. The one thing I haven't quite looked into yet is, and there might be ways to do this, I just haven't really thought too much about it. But if you were to see what like the current block space limit is for Ethereum right now, so however much gas can get sent into one block, I don't know if there's any data that suggests how much gas could cost in the future, because a lot of that is going to change. Like I mostly did that as a hedge, but ETH 2.0 is going to change like those gas prices
That's
and potentially for the
that's
better.
such a good point. All right. I can go ahead and say I will add that to the agenda to the Hex Quant gang, or especially if even if we could have you as a guest again, or we could collaborate with you on your channel, whatever it takes. I think that's knowable. I think that's knowable because maybe it's not knowable.
Yeah,
That might be knowable.
It might be like there's at least I think there's at least enough information to get a good sense as to how to like maybe do some of that stuff without running into issues later. But there might be some decent assumptions, like because I guess I would have to look at how much gas there can even be, let's say for one block now, and then just see what the historical prices have been, and then just kind of take into account, like in the future, like a lot of this is going to change with ETH, so anything, in a way where it's like conservative for the future. It's like in the current case, like where the gas, the prices are relatively high. Here's kind of a hedge against that. But in reality, later on with ETH 2.0, it actually may be relatively low cost to mint your coins later on. And what was really nice with the big payday bonus is effectively there's a lot of OGs that effectively got like a subsidy. It's almost like a sub, even though it's the big, you got a bonus payout, but effectively it's almost like you even got a subsidy that even takes into account like that potential cost later on. But that's the current snapshot of things. Like I have to look into what Ethereum's upgrades are to get even a better sense of what the gas prices may even look like
but
a
if
year
we
from
could
now.
give people some peace of mind, I think in my approach to looking at the data that's knowable, there are variables in Hex that are unknowable in the future. There are variables that are knowable in the future. And so even if we could create an upper limit, or kind of like, what else would it be? It would be like kind of an upper range on what the cost would be. That would give people so much peace of mind to know, okay, if I have X amount of Ethereum, because basically what's happening in the Hex contract is the reason why it's gonna cost more computational power the longer the contract goes. So the more days we are into Hex that you lock, the more computations need to be run to compute what your interest actually came out to on that day for every single day going back since you started your stake.
Right.
And so that's why it's more expensive to end a year-long stake now than it is to start a year-long stake, because there's more computations that are needed to be done. But that should be at a constant rate. And so it would almost be kind of like, a future on the cost of unstaking. And again, so if people could put that amount of ETH aside and then not have to always worry about what the price of ETH is or holding out,
Yeah, I agree. I think stuff like that would definitely be really helpful. And then and then what's nice is like even with enough time, I know the communities, I've seen tweets where there's a couple, like there's people just kind of making suggestions on how best to take that into account, like basically piling stakes into one, things like that. Because honestly, like even that's actually one thing that's really nice with depending on how you set up your staking ladder, you could effectively make it really efficient where you only have to mint coins like maybe once or twice a year, depending on like what your financial needs are. I think generally speaking, like if you're staking 10 or 15 years from now, I don't think there's any reason why you can't just put that into like one stake versus, I think that that's like, it is nice, let's say having like a monthly stream of money coming in, but even if you were to put it into like one stake or something like that, I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. And plus like it's just more efficient because you only have to, it reduces how many times you even have to interact with the smart contract, things like that. And then in the grand scheme of things, like with the APY that is paid out, you'll still get what the benefits of the APY, and then plus you'll be able to roll it into stakes in a more efficient manner because you only have to interact with the contract so many times.
I wasn't gonna do this, but I'm gonna drop some knowledge on the audience here, and I want you to know that this knowledge is not free. I will be charging for it. I'm asking all of you to follow myself and Look Into Crypto across all platforms. Go to allmylinks.com/allin. Go into the show notes. If I don't have him, I should have him in there already. If I don't have all of his different platforms, then I'll make sure to add that right after the show. So that's the deal here, folks. If you're going to act on this information that I'm about to share with you, that will put you in an advantage against everybody who's already staked in HEX. One of the incredible things about HEX is that it leaves meat on the bone, unlike any economic invention ever. It's been designed. HEX only went up 352x in 2020 from its deepest discount. And I think it could have gone up way more if the founder was promising things, if it allowed longer staking, if it allowed 30-year stakes. I think if there are a lot of reasons why it could have gone up more if people had realized how valuable it is, and on and on. I'm on here. So I'm going to go ahead and share this with you. It puts me in a disadvantage. I don't know why I'm doing this. I guess I'm doing it because I trust that you all will follow Look Into Crypto and I am going to hex.vision. It loads Elastic Kibana, which I used to try to learn how to use that, but I don't know how it works. It's very complicated. It's like a decentralized, I don't know what it is. Here we go. So this is the future market supply. What did Richard say? He said, put your stakes to end in these gaps if you want to. Aha. Why would you do that? Because then you're going to have HEX coming out at a time when nobody else does. And possibly everybody else's HEX could be locked up at that point. Why is that good? Well, because those might be the times when the HEX to USD price pumps the most. Look Into Crypto, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. It's it's really nice the way this is laid out because it does help with staking ladder strategies as far as when to position stakes and such. And then kind of the idea is at a later point in time, because I use this general rule of thumb really for any of the crypto holdings I have. I never sell out of the full bag or anything like that. What's going to be
I
really,
want to ask you. I want to ask you about that. I just want to make a note to the audience. Get your finger off the stake button right now because I'm going to qualify this. So stop staking right now at this moment. Okay. And I want to get your thoughts on this Look Into Crypto before we talk about why I should never sell completely out of some of my bags. I'm interested in knowing, what do you think the trade-off is here between longer pays better, which we know is a certainty in terms of the value of HEX, right? Longer always pays better in HEX because that's what HEX can deliver on. You mint your own rewards, and longer pays better always through the T-share system. But what is the case in terms of this USD playing these gaps? What are the differences there? Because that would because basically Richard is saying, oh, maybe some people want to fill in these gaps so that their HEX will be coming out when HEX is more scarce relative to other points in time. But those people who just continue to stake longer, they could end up doing better. So it depends what game you want to play.
Yeah.
Do you want to play the cash out game, or do you want to play the stay in HEX game? If you want to play the stay in HEX game for more than 15 years, or if you want to increase your leagues to your rank to the highest extent possible, I think you would still want to do the longest stake because you're valuing your wealth in HEX. But if you're wanting to value your wealth outside of HEX, or you're wanting to play both games, then you might consider not only doing longer pays better, but also doing gaps pay better or scarcity pays better. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good point. So at least in terms of the scarcity, whenever you have less supply like coming into the market at a certain period of time, there is, of course, like there's just less selling pressure that could take place. Personally, I don't know, like this is just in general for the cryptocurrency market, like 20, like even 10, like a decade from now, that's a relatively long period of time. So in terms of like what prices can be at that time is, it's pretty much like a guess across the entire market. But it could be like the idea is like, at least if you have stakes coming out where there's like a lull, like there's not too many people having minting coins at the time, there's less potential selling pressure, so you potentially get a better price like at that time if you're taking gains on some of the interest. Now that's, let's say, like one of the approaches you can do. The other aspect is for somebody that doesn't really care about, they're not as closely in tune like with the price or something like that, then they can basically keep doing 15-year stakes to maximize interest in time, and basically keep going, keep rolling those into new stakes, because there's really multiple games here. Like somebody could in theory cash out like at whatever time they have stakes coming out, but then you potentially sacrifice how many T shares you can buy in the future. So generally speaking, long periods of time help reduce like the risk of selling, let's say like a low, like a bottom after like a market cycle or something like that. Kind of the idea is like, at least generally speaking, whoever's tried to like time the market, it just for the large majority, it just does not work out for most people, with the exception of maybe a very few people that either that really just comes down to like luck, and we're talking like a very negligible percentage compared to how many people are in this market today. So if your goal is to basically keep accumulating HEX and T shares, then you could in theory just keep doing 15-year stakes. Another strategy is you could perhaps take some of the interest off the table and buy back the same amount of T shares, which I think if you're doing 10-year stakes or more, I don't think you can necessarily, because I think you would have to restake all your coins to buy back all the T shares on that. I could be wrong on that. Don't necessarily quote me on that one, but there's multiple ways you can basically play it. Like you could think of it in perspective of T shares and trying to hold a certain minimum over a certain length of time.
I think you get to keep your T shares if you stake as long as you did before.
Yeah,
again.
I think that's correct. Yeah, I believe that's correct. Because
No, that's not true. You get to keep your rank, but not your T shares, because T shares are deflationary. The price only goes up, and so in the future, there will in 200 years, a million T shares or a million shares or 1,000 shares will be baller. That's what the Poseidons are going to have. And so that's something to keep in mind also, is that like, it's not just how many T shares you have, but it's how long you have them for, that they're pumping out that, that Genesis inflation, or not inflation, the Genesis interest, we could call it.
Yeah. Cause I guess like I was thinking, like, for example, if somebody had, let's say like a 4-year stake or something like that, I think in that circumstance, like after you mint your coins, you could take some of the interest off the table and then stake it for, let's say, like 8 or 9 years or something like that, and still end up with more T shares, but that's because you're staking it for like a longer period of time, and not necessarily like the 4 years. There's kind of that whole where you can leapfrog it over longer periods of time if you're trying to basically boost your
So
your
you
account.
wouldn't get more T-shares, but you get more relative shares
Yeah, more
compared
relative,
to everybody
right.
else in the system, or compared to yourself if you weren't staking as long. And
Mm.
remember, though, that that compound interest, because it's an exponential function, as far as I know, it moves against you, right? Like at an incredible rate. So if you're already in year 1.3 of the product, you're already paying 70% more for a T-share. Well, that's 70% more that an exponential move is going to separate you from everybody else. So that's why we were looking at, on the last Quant Gang, the huge difference it makes when you start separating out those early differences in the amount. So it's something to keep in mind. The reason why I've got this chart up is this is the same thing as this, except broken out in a different way to just show you how much is coming out at certain times. So this allows you to see at a certain time, and Wales only made this display name income.watch. And so you're able to see where those spots are, that there are gaps, and
Yeah.
that tells you how to play the game of cashing out. Whereas you might want to be playing multiple games, as LookIntoCrypto has been saying.
Yeah, because I think what's going to happen, at least like if you look over a long period of time, there's going to be people like perhaps that like their quality of life could potentially change by some pretty unbelievable amounts after that period of time, where they're potentially like in a position of wealth they've just never had before. And I suspect those people are more likely to, let's say, like cash out, let's say, like completely, where you just, let's say you sell the whole bag or something like that, because like they haven't necessarily had that kind of let's say wealth before. Whereas like somebody like existing whales, like if you look at what their strategies are over time, generally, I think this is even true for perhaps like Bitcoin whales or Ethereum whales, is like generally they just try to hoard more supply like over time. Is there's like multiple, and I'm not really vouching for like one strategy like versus the other. It really just depends on like what your life situation is, like what your necessities are. But generally, like the strongest assets over time, the supply of that basically keeps getting increasingly hoarded over longer periods of time. And that's why you have these huge parabolic rises even in cryptocurrency, because in the bear market what's happening is people are effectively buying coins, hoarding. Even it's all relative too. Like everybody's bag is, it's all relative. Like there's always somebody that's going to have more coins than you, but generally speaking, regardless, everybody's has kind of a very similar intention. Like if they're buying in a bear market, they're effectively helping hoard up the supply, and then that's effectively what causes these huge run-ups, because you have infinite fiat printing, and that money does have to end up somewhere. And it's pretty, like the macro trend is pretty telling for crypto in general. I mean, it's going to be worth absurd amounts like decades out. I don't even think I can imagine what kind of market cap or prices. Like it could be pretty extraordinary.
Now, that may transition us to the next topic that we identified. You could share your insights about, has to do with this idea that you were saying of not selling completely out of any of your bags. Now, why? And because so the transition there in my mind is that Bitcoin did 5.7 million X, which is 570 million% in the past 10 years, in the past 11 years. So where are all the people who put in $100 and have $500 million?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a. Mhm.
They sold at $30. They
Mm,
sold at
yeah.
$100. They sold at $30 because it went from 100 right back down to 30. That's my transition.
Hmm.
Can you teach me?
Um. So yeah, the exactly what you said there. So the moment you completely like, regardless of like what cryptocurrency you're holding, if it's Ethereum, if you're holding a lot of HEX, what ends up happening is if you basically take your entire position 100%, and if you liquidate it, you cash it out into whatever fiat currency at one particular snapshot of time, you have a lot of things going against you. First off, you have the constraints of like even just long-term versus short-term taxes. And if you're using a centralized exchange, and if you deposit a shit ton of money on there, you're going to get taxed on it. There's no way to avoid that. That shit's all getting reported to the IRS, especially Coinbase, Kraken, and those are
And
basically
if they didn't ask who you were on the way in, they're going to ask who you are on the way out. And if you don't send them your DNA sample and all your selfies and, your whole list of family members, and every different version of your birth certificate, right? They will not give you your money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the amount that you lose, even let's say for long-term gains, the moment you make, let's say, the sale into USD, it's going to vary depending on what state you're in. But for example, let's say you live in a state like New York or California, long-term gains, if you've made, you're going to lose 35% of those, like whatever the capital gains are. So you're left with 65% of your bag from the start. Okay, so now you're left with 65%. Now let's look at the market cycle as a whole. If you've sold while the market's in expansion, now basically that 65% is going to keep getting depleted to lower and lower amounts. So that 65% could be, let's say, 10% in a period of like 2 years. So the
if you're
risk
valuing your wealth in crypto, or if you ever wanted to buy back in, what you've done is just shot yourself in the foot and bled out so much that now you're going to have to kick yourself with your other foot.
Exactly, because and that's why I always recommend, like, whenever you take profits in this market, there's nothing wrong with just you do it slowly. Like you can take profits, you move it to some other investment vehicle like real estate, or you want other physical asset. And the thing is, like, if you do it, like if you just ideally you kind of start to you peel off. I think that's the term Richard uses. You peel off amounts at a time. You can move it into something else, and then over time, like, you can start having more assets, so that if one is doing shit, perhaps one is doing better, you're kind of hedged from that perspective. You have assets, but it takes a long time to get to that point, and trying to completely sell out at a particular instance in time is oftentimes extremely detrimental to like your long-term position in the market. It even goes back to what you mentioned with Bitcoin being $10, $30, $100. Most people, they got shaken out or they sold, and then or really just they sold their whole bag with the intent of trying to buy back lower, and they didn't, and they ended up basically buying higher. So my general strategy is like, whatever I'm holding, I believe in long term, and I'm just going to peel off certain amounts for one to reduce the tax liability, and then the opportunity to slowly move it over into like other investments, and just have investments over time. So I personally would not even want to deal with the psychology of trying to sell like into like USD or something like that, and then like buy back lower or whatever. Like it's not a realistic expectation.
Absolutely. I got a screen to share here. Let's see here. Poor Greg. Can we see this? Oh, can I add it? Okay. Greg says, I wish I had kept my 1,700 BTC at 6 cents instead of selling them at 30 cents. now that they're $8 each. Yikes.
Yeah, and that's always the that's always the bitch when it comes to hindsight is psychologically your mind is always going to look at the optimal play. Like and the thing is the optimal play is in a market in general is pretty much indeterministic what that ends up being. So I kind of let go of like the ideology of having this idea where I can sell the top or something like that and buy back lower. I pretty much just threw that out entirely and just I have a much more risk averse approach so that later on I'm not in this position that Greg is in where he would have had literally like just some massive amounts of generational wealth because that's exactly what happens when you try to outperform the market and try to perfect like all your moves. It's just quite frankly, it's just not going to happen for most people. And now Greg can probably buy like maybe 1 Bitcoin today instead of the seven. Actually, I have no idea how many coins Greg can buy today, but kind of the whole thing he lost
he sold for 30 cents, so he got $510 out, so he could buy 0.01% of Bitcoin. Not that much of a Bitcoin.
Yeah.
1,700 times what's the price right now? 55.
55, yeah.
Okay. 55,000. This is going to be hard to keep track of all these zeros. All right, I think I can do it. 93.5 million.
Mm.
Do you want $500 or do you want 93.5 million? The choice is yours.
Yeah, and like even in the case so that 1,700 Bitcoin, if you actually let's say take the USD value he got for selling at let's say 30 cents, and then versus like this snapshot in 2011 when it was $8, he lost actually 97% of his bag, and like that 1,700 turned into like 65 Bitcoin or something like that, which today that's a lot. That's like a ridiculous amount of money for a lot of people. But that's also assuming he bought back in at $8 and held since then. If there was any, okay, so now,
him.
Yeah.
So he could have bought in if he bought back his 1,700 that he dumped for $500. He could have bought back in at $8 for 13,600.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Greg's missing out on 95 million. Poor Greg.
That's
I've
brutal.
tried to he doesn't have messages open for obvious reasons because people are probably bugging him, but yeah, I would give him some HEX. Because I use his content so often as a lesson to people in HEX.
Yeah.
Hey, check out what happens when you have diamonds, and you don't want to squander them. Now, looking at crypto, as we this time truly only have 12 more minutes left, instead of our surprise double episode here. So what if it's another crypto other than HEX? I've been dollar cost averaging out of it. It's been good to me so far. I don't think it's going to perform as well as HEX. But that's what I've been using to dollar cost average into HEX over this time now. I mean, I know you can't tell me what to do with it, but like, what should I be thinking? What are the different angles? Because I'm not really cashing it out to the dollar, which I know inflation's going to take off, and I know that they're printing more dollars. I don't really have any control on the scarcity of dollars. I don't have any awesome insights into like what the housing market's going to do, right? Like, I don't know that I want to be tied down to a certain area anyway. And so like for me, diversifying into real estate, like Greg did with his $510 rent payment, that's not going to make sense for me. Yeah. And so how should I be thinking about a crypto that, a crypto other than HEX, and do I want? So anyway, I think I've given you enough information. How should I be thinking about this?
Yeah, that's like an interesting question, and I don't think there's necessarily like a right or wrong answer. And I think there's just multiple there's just like multiple ways you can go about it, and then some are just gonna have like be less risky than the other. So for example, so personally, like in terms of real estate, I don't really consider, let's say, real estate per se, like you're not going to make like you're not the pumping potential on something like real estate's very low. So you can't go into something like that with the expectation that you're going to like 10x your money. That's just not going to happen. To me, real estate it's more of a practical hedge in case like all the financial markets just go to shit for a while, so that you at least have like a physical asset. And I do consider it a much better physical asset than something like gold or silver. I'm not trying to like talk shit on like gold bugs or silver bugs, but I would personally rather have something like real estate as like a hedge, as a physical asset. But I'm not doing it with the expectation of having like massive amounts of like profit or something. So in terms of opportunity, honestly, keeping let's say most of your wealth, even in something like crypto, over a long period of time isn't like, that's actually a pretty reasonable strategy, because the amount of potential gains you can make on that is much larger, much larger than something like putting a lot of that into real estate, which is it's just a slow moving asset because it's so heavy right now. So personally, if you want massive gains, nothing wrong with staying in crypto. It's of course, yeah. So I think staying in crypto is perfectly fine. And then a lot of it is with a lot of like, in terms of the market itself, like you'll always have over a longer period of time, there's going to be basically a value over periods of time that floats to the top. So we've seen that like Bitcoin was the first. So it kind of has that pass, even though there's a lot of things it does suck at doing, but just because it was the first and it has like a big network effect, it'll likely always be here. Ethereum has a really big network effect. And then like in the case for something like HEX, like the reason why I invested in HEX and set up the staking ladder the way I did is because I do believe over time, like over a long period of time, that its future value potential, I think, is much higher over a long period of time. So I just stick into coins that I believe in, and generally, Bitcoin and Ethereum are ones that I think are very solid. And then even for like this cycle play, because I consider basically something like HEX, it's like a Gen 3 coin. So you've had like Bitcoin's Gen 1, Ethereum is Gen 2, and then Gen 3. So you have HEX like in the DeFi vertical. And I think the farther and farther we go along, the space is going to end up getting refined to the point where certain things are going to end up accruing the most value over time. And I mean, it's still super early for HEX. I mean, it's only been a little bit over a year now. So I only put things that I have like a strong belief in over time. So I think if you're doing that with your cryptocurrencies, I think that's a really good strategy. And
it's like I'm trying to get out of this other coin, and I'm doing it like again in a responsible way of like not dumping it all on the market, and like but every time I sell it, it just goes up, and then it's like I've sold I think like half of my bag, and of course these are long-term gains. And so in like certain states, it's my understanding, especially if there are lots of like tax loss harvesting software, like crypto software. Right. I'll do a review of that pretty soon here so other people can see kind of what's been going on, because I do believe in I don't really believe in paying taxes, but I do pay taxes. Okay. And I just think it makes sense. Like at least I decide like year by year whether I'm going to pay taxes. I paid taxes all the way up until this point. Like I'm good with the IRS. And, I think again, this year I'm going to be, fully good with the IRS, but so I'll be able to do some streams on that. But so And remember, whenever you convert one cryptocurrency to another, then that's another cost that's coming into play where you are having to pay taxes on that, even though you're not cashing out. And so you do have to keep that in mind, because if institutions know that like you're not taking your money out to pay taxes, and then they tank the market for a few days, right? Then they could make it so you would be in more panic selling lower, and then they're getting a bigger stack than ever of your crypto away from you, right? And so, but I think, I don't know. So it's like, we're not talking about like a big percentage of my bag, but it's like, or of my crypto portfolio. I mean, we're talking about 5 or 10%, you know, and it used to be a third or something. But I like can't get it below like the 5 or 10% mark, because it's just, the whole market is doing so well. And I think the you know, when I've put it into ETH, like ETH has been going up so much, and when I put it into HEX, like HEX has been going up so much. It's just been like, it's been really cool.
And that's like the awesome thing with these market cycles is like, it could get to the point where you're just making like absurd, like your portfolio is growing up like absurd amounts, like even on the daily. I think in the case of like, if you're trying to, let's say, move it into like USD or some other government issued currency, generally, I don't like, at least like in terms of cash, like I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to have some cash on the side, even if it's just a low percentage, because it's always good having that in the event of like an emergency where you just need to have some liquid cash. It also prevents you from liquidating like your long-term positions, but it could even just be like a couple percentage points where maybe you just have like a small percent of your portfolio in like USD coin or something like that. And then I don't know how, I have not personally used any of the DeFi platforms, but I guess if you are using something to try to lend out coins through a smart contract, there's risk associated with that, with the hacking on that. So you could try to get APY on that, but your risk level is also higher with like those smart contracts. So
everybody who's watching is not allowed to do that.
It's gonna take time for a lot of that, like a lot of the experimentation when it comes to the smart contracts to get worked out, at least in the case of like lending stable coins or stuff like that. So I guess like if you're going the safest possible way, you can just have a little bit of liquid cash on the sideline, and then if you either need it in emergency, or if there's like a dip in the market, you have some cash where you may consider, oh, maybe I want to reinvest this back into the market. It basically gives you an additional lever you can operate. And that's kind of what I think of like investing in general is like, one of my levers, well, really two of it, is I have Bitcoin and Ethereum as like levers. Like how much position do I want in Bitcoin versus Ethereum? I have way more Ethereum personally. But that's kind of like more of a way for me to, you know, manage risk like in my portfolio. And then, so that's basically levers I operate. HEX, I have a staking ladder set up. So I consider that, you know, a long-term savings account that's decentralized, and then I'll be able to mint my coins at a later point in time. That's a lever I operate. And then over time, the idea is I just want to have more levers I can toggle on or off depending on what I think is a good strategy at the time. And then generally, like I do have a little bit of cash on the sideline. It's not like a lot relative for my entire portfolio, but it's just basically there in the case of like more of like an emergency situation, just in case. But for the most part, like I have the majority of my money placed in investments, and those primarily high growth, which is the cryptocurrencies. And then over time, I'll just have more things ideally to have over time. And really, I think that for me, like psychologically, my goal is at some point to basically get into the not really like, I'm not trying to be like a whale or something like that in the real estate market, nor do I have the economic mass to even do such a thing. But my goal is really just to have, let's say, a physical hedge at some point. But it's to me, it's not as high of a priority as a high growth assets like cryptocurrency, because I know that having most of my liquidity in cryptocurrency is going to have far bigger impact in terms of the gains over a long period of time versus putting a lot of that into real estate, not financial advice, of course.
Yes.
So that's my long-term strategy, and I think I'm just very bullish on the space for this entire decade, and regardless of the FUD and bear markets. So
can I say it's very refreshing to hear somebody else be thinking that it is okay, right, to have a good position in crypto, because that scared me. all during the bear market, all anybody would ever say is like, only put in the amount of money that you want to lose. But like, you're really losing with the US dollar, and you're really gaining with crypto. And so, not financial advice, stop buying tops and selling bottoms.
Yeah.
I dollar cost average. It's been a pleasure having you on. Gary just started, and so I'm going to share the link here. I want to make sure everybody follows me over there to his program. I think it's going to be an excellent one that's going to follow up this content perfectly. And then I also want to ask you all to hit the like button and subscribe here on this channel. All the valuable information that you've gotten from us, I think it's worth going over to Look Into Crypto's stuff, subscribing, liking, right? And then hit the like button on Funding Jim Gary. He's doing awesome content too. So thank you to all our content creators. Thank you to those of you who have been in the audience. And we'll see you next time. Stake wisely, my friends.